Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our webinar today, Strong Start, Connecting Early Literacy Screening with the Massachusetts Dyslexia Guidelines. We hope that you get to take some time off this summer and relax after a long, strenuous year, but we are thrilled that you're joining us today. We will be repeating this webinar again on August 17th, so if you know of any colleagues who were not able to make it today and would like to join, you're welcome to share with them. In addition, we will be recording this and we will be posting it on the Mass Literacy Guide under the top resources page, which I will be showing you a little later on. Okay, our goals for today are to discuss the importance of early literacy screening. We're going to show you where to find approved screeners, how we chose them, and show you resources to help you choose and use your screener, and also make connections to and highlight the Massachusetts Dyslexia Guidelines. I will be starting us off. My name is Susan Kazeroid, and I am a literacy content lead for the Office of Literacy and Humanities. With me today is Jean Liu, who's a special education early learning and literacy supervisor, and she will be sharing information from the Dyslexia Guidelines with you. Monitoring the Q&A and dropping links into the chat will be Donna Goldstein, who is also a literacy content lead for the Office of Literacy and Humanities. Please feel free to use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. We will have some time reserved at the end of the session. We may not have enough time to get to all of your questions, but we will be sure to gather them and respond to you. In addition, the last slide of the presentation includes all three of our contact information. So please feel free to reach out to us after today with any questions. We know that students come into your schools and classrooms with a variety of unique needs and experiences. Assessing where students are and then providing evidence-based literacy instruction followed by progress monitoring is critical in making sure all students have a successful literacy experience. We're going to talk a little bit about universal screening assessment or early literacy assessment. These should be efficient and reliable and administered to all students as a first step in identifying which students are at risk. Screening assessments can tell us which students will struggle in the future if they do not receive evidence-based instruction and in some cases, additional intervention right now. Screeners also can tell us what instruction students now need to be on a successful track. I am going to click on the link at the top of the heading here, which will actually take us to the early literacy screening assessment page. I want to orientate you to what is on the page, and Donna has dropped the slides, so you also have the slides. And just so you know, anything in blue is a clickable link. So I'm going to click on the early literacy screening page. And I just want to show you at the top here, if you click on any of these headings, they will jump right to them. This approved literacy screening assessments, there are 2 Word documents on here which are downloadable. I'm going to talk about those in a minute. One is the Early Literacy Universal Screening Assessment Guidance, and the other one is Early Literacy Approved Screening Assessments at a Glance. I'm going to talk about those in more detail in a moment. And then we also have the approved screeners listed here, and then information about them. I'm going to go back. So what you saw on the page were these 2 headings. And like I said, they're both downloadable Word documents. On the next 2 slides, I'm going to talk a little bit more about what is in the documents, and I'll refer to them as document number 1 and document number 2. So document number 1 is Early Literacy Universal Screening Assessment Guidance. This document describes the purpose of universal screening, the process we went through, the piloting we went through, and also lists the approved screeners. The second document is called Early Literacy Approved Screening Assessment at a Glance, and it gives key information about each of the screeners that have been approved. And I'll get a little more into that in the next few slides. So this is the criteria, the basic criteria that we used in order to evaluate the screening assessment. They had to be valid and reliable. They had to be based in science. They had to be brief. They had to be administered 3 times a year, and they had to be both code and meaning based. This you will find on that first Word document, the Universal Screening Assessment Guidance. There is an Appendix A there, and you will find more information about each of these criteria. They're defined a little more in case you're interested. We also, in the 1920 school year, 4 of the screening assessments were piloted by 13 different schools across the Commonwealth. So in this assessment guidance is also data that was provided by the pilot participants on the 4 assessments. So that is also within the Universal Screening Assessment Guidance. You also saw a list of the approved screeners listed right on the webpage. Just so you know, each of these screeners, if you're interested, it takes you right to the publisher's page with more information about the approved screeners. So we know when choosing your screener, there are many things you want to think about. Which screener will work well for your district? Do you want to use pencil and paper? Do you want a screener that can be done digitally? You know, you want the screener to be short, but you also want to make sure it's comprehensive, and you want to make sure you're screening early. Once you screen, you want to make sure that you provide evidence-based instruction and then progress monitor your students. We don't want to screen and then hope our students make progress and wait until the next screening cycle to find out. So on the next slide, you're going to see an example of one of the approved screeners and some information to help you choose which screener is right for your district. So this comes from that second Word document, Early Literacy Universal Screening Assessment Guidance, approved screening assessments at a glance. So each approved screener has its own page that looks like this. It gives detailed information on the grade span, the administration time, whether or not it can be given paper and pencil or digitally, the languages it's available in, the skills that are assessed, the costs. It gives detailed information on professional development, and then whom to contact for more information. Any screener should assess letter ID or naming, phonological awareness, fluency, and word reading. So I alluded to this earlier, progress monitoring, but just a reminder that an important question once you screen all students and provide targeted instruction is the student making meaningful progress? Progress monitoring takes place after screening and setting goals for individual students, and after a round of evidence-based instruction is administered. This next slide, which is also found in the Universal Screening Guidance document, the first document, gives you a list of the screeners that have been approved and whether or not they have the ability to progress monitor. For FastBridge, you can use some of the other assessments to progress monitor. For Lexia, you need Core 5 to progress monitor, and NWEA MAP does not include progress monitor. So some of you may be familiar with the Mass Literacy Guide and our Mass Literacy Initiative. Some of you may not. So I'm just going to do a brief overview. Mass literacy is a statewide effort to empower educators with the evidence-based practices for literacy that all students need. Evidence-based instruction provided within schools and classrooms that are culturally responsive and sustaining will put our youngest students on a path toward literacy for life. As part of mass literacy over the next several years, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education will offer early literacy programming that will be paired with implementation supports, including resources, professional development, and grants. So the Mass Literacy Guide is one of the things that we have provided. I want to show you that there's a couple places on the Mass Literacy Guide that will support both your screening and your planning for instruction, and also for helping put the systems in place for multi-tiered systems of support. I'm going to click on the resources guide now and walk you through. So this is the Mass Literacy homepage, and you can see you can access from the headings here in blue on the left-hand side, or you can also access from the graphics on the bottom. I'm going to show you on the top resources page. This is where we have all of our previous webinars that we have done. And in particular, I really want to point out this webinar by Dr. Nadine Gobb that was done on January 7th, and the focus is early literacy screening. So this is also a great resource for you. I also want to point out that once you have screened and you've progress monitored and you know some students are experiencing reading difficulties, here's a place that you can go to. And these are all the different places that students might break down. For today's purpose, I'm just going to click on the phonological awareness puzzle piece. But just so that you know, all of the other puzzle pieces are set up similarly. So they will all tell you how problems with the particular skills present. They will link to screening for skills. So this right here links to our screening page. They will talk about the underlying causes. And you can also see here, which we're going to get into in a moment, but the Mass Literacy Guide also links directly to the Massachusetts Dyslexia Guidelines, which Jean is going to share in more detail with you in a moment. And it also shows you a section on preventing problems and then intervening. So each of those pages on this home page of the puzzle pieces is set up very similarly. And then I just want to show you one more spot on the Mass Literacy Guide under Leading a Multi-Tiered System of Support. So when you come to the Leading a Multi-Tiered System Support homepage, you get to these gears, which are meant to work together as a well-oiled machine. For today's purpose, I'm just going to click briefly on the database decision making. And I'm going to show you that this links to early reading assessments, where it talks about universal screening, diagnostic assessments, progress monitoring, and then identification and prevention of difficulty. And here also you will see, it also links to the importance of screening for risk of dyslexia, a particular chapter from the Massachusetts Dyslexia Guideline resource. And again, Jean will be sharing that with you in a moment. So we're going to spend the next period of time talking about the Dyslexia Guidelines. This is an excerpt from the Universal Assessment Screening Guidance. We have purposely tried to be very transparent and consistent between the Mass Literacy Guide and the Dyslexia Guidelines. So as you have the opportunity after today to spend more time looking through each of those, you will see the links between the two documents. So we want to be clear that a universal screening assessment will identify students at risk for future reading difficulties, not identify students with dyslexia. And with that, I am going to turn over to my colleague, Jean Liu, who will take over talking more about the Dyslexia Guidelines.
Thank you, Susan. Hi, everyone. I'm Jane, and I'm with the Office of Special Education Planning and Policy Development. I'm just going to click on this. Okay, there we go. So that link takes you directly to, and I believe Donna's going to drop the link, or if she hasn't already, drop a link in chat. So this is the Massachusetts Dyslexia Guidelines. It consists of 9 chapters with appendices and glossary, and it was actually created with input from numerous stakeholders and stakeholder groups and various units within the department. And it goes, as you'll see when you get a chance later on, it gives you the purpose, the goals of the guidelines. You will be able to see the alignment between the guidelines and the other guidances, such as the Mass Literacy Guide, as well as the MTSS guidelines. And then it also provides information on special education referral and evaluation, and how to support English language learners who are experiencing reading difficulties. At the end of each chapter, you'll find endnotes as well as links to additional resources and supports as needed. So with that said, can you take me back to the presentation, Susan, please? Oh, okay, thanks. I didn't realize it was right there. Thank you. Okay, there we go. Okay, so the overall purpose of the guidelines is to provide educators, especially general educators, with evidence-based strategies and resources to meet the needs of students experiencing reading difficulties. The expectation is that by implementing the practices identified in the guidelines, teachers will be in a better position to ensure that all students receive equitable and immediate access to reading support. Students receive early screening and relevant interventions as needed. They receive the necessary literacy and language screening and interventions in the early grades. And they receive high quality evidence-based language and literacy instruction that would allow them to effectively engage in the general education curriculum. This guidelines covers screening, MTSS, progress monitoring, special education supports and services for those identified to have dyslexia, and considerations for English learners at risk for dyslexia. According to NICHD, dyslexia is defined as a specific learning disability that is neurobiological in origin. People with dyslexia often exhibit difficulties with accurate and/or fluent word recognition and poor spelling and decoding abilities. The difficulties typically result from a deficit in the phonological component of language that is often unexpected in relation to other cognitive abilities and in spite of the provision of high quality, effective classroom instruction. Because of this, secondary consequences of dyslexia may include problems in reading comprehension and reduced reading experience that can further impede growth of vocabulary and background knowledge. With that said, though, however, students who experience reading difficulties and may even be identified as having dyslexia may not necessarily qualify for special education. In order to be eligible for special education services, a student must have an identified disability that affects their education and their academic progress. To determine whether a student needs specially designed instruction, teachers or parents can request a referral for an initial evaluation. From there, within 30 days of receiving parent consent, the school must conduct a comprehensive initial evaluation that considers the student's primary language, that assesses all areas related to the suspected disability, that includes valid and reliable measures, as well as a variety of assessment tools and strategies. And for the identification of specific learning disability or SLD or dyslexia, federal law requires that districts must permit the use of a student's response to research-based intervention as part of the initial evaluation. And districts cannot require the use of the IQ achievement discrepancy to determine whether a student has SLD or dyslexia. These are some of the possible tools for eligibility determination for special education. classroom observation of performance and benchmark or screening assessments, educational history, language proficiency assessment results, family history, family input and observations, developmental history and potential adverse experiences, psychological assessments, academic assessments, speech and language eval, and any needs-specific rating skills. So, in summary, special education services should really be reserved for students who cannot successfully make progress in general education without specially designed instruction. Referrals should only be made after high-quality research or evidence-based instruction has been provided within the various tiers of MTSS. Unless screening measures or parent concerns warrant immediate referral, then districts are required to follow through with evaluations. And I think most importantly, cultural and linguistic differences must be taken into account when assessing student strengths, their weaknesses, their academic progress, and the response to interventions.
Thank you, Jean. Donna, whoops. Jean, can you scroll back 2 slides for some reason? Oh, there we go. Donna, are there any questions in the Q&A?
Hey, Susan. Yes, we do have a couple right now. And actually, both of them are around 2 items that attendees did not see on the list of approved screeners. First question is around Early Bird. Is Early Bird going to be on the list for approved screeners?
So that's a good question. Early Bird has just sort of come out now. Officially, it had been under pilot. So our department has been in conversations with Early Bird, and we are working on that.
Got it. Okay, thank you, Susan. The second question related to an item that is not on the list of approved screeners was NWEA reading fluency is not listed, but the question says it does have progress monitoring. Do you know anything about why that one was not on the approved list?
So when we were considering, it had to have progress monitoring in all of the skill areas, not just the oral reading fluency. So you can use that to progress monitor fluency, but it doesn't have the other skills necessary for early literacy.
Okay, I have one more program question, and then I do have a couple
Sure.
of questions related to instruction. This one is about iReady. Does iReady have a progress monitoring component for early literacy skills? I guess someone was looking on the chart for it and it's not indicated there.
That's a good question. I am not as familiar with iReady. Let me document that question and I will get back to whoever the person is.
Okay, all right, I'll make a note of the name here. I have a couple of questions here. First is about a referral. The person is wondering about referring kindergarten students for special ed evaluation if they haven't received any instruction yet, but if their screening comes up indicating concerns. So would a kindergarten student be recommended referred for special ed eval if they hadn't received any instruction yet?
Jean, do you want to respond to that one? Sure. If they did receive screening, it really depends on what the screening results are. If if the screening results show pretty severe difficulties, then depending on the teacher, depending on the parents, they may want to go ahead and request an evaluation, which is perfectly fine. But typically, we want to eliminate any environmental external factors that may be affecting a student's ability to their literacy development.
Thank you, Jean. Another question here. is a child who is having reading difficulties, but not necessarily dyslexia, are they required to have a comprehensive eye exam first to rule out potential presence of a vision disorder before other interventions would be employed?
You definitely do want to eliminate, again, other factors that may be affecting a child's ability to read. So if screening of vision is an issue, that could be, that's something definitely to consider. If comprehension is an issue, then you may want to think about hearing, listening comprehension. You may want to look at hearing screening. So it's really making sure that all the areas affected by the suspected disability or difficulties are being addressed and looked at.
Thank you, Jean. Another question here. Let me see. Easy CBM. What about Easy CBM for use as a screener?
So right now, the only screeners we are recommending are the ones that are on our approved list.
Okay, thank you.
However, sorry, Donna, the RFR to apply to be an approved screener is open. It is on our website and it is open until December of 21. So any publisher is welcome to apply.
Okay, thank you. Let me scroll down to the bottom here. Okay. Will there be a webinar like this for middle school students?
That's a good question. It would be a great idea. I don't know of one that is planned, but it's definitely something to take into consideration. So thank you.
Okay. Are the new dyslexia guidelines only for the state of Massachusetts, or are these guidelines coming from the federal level?
So every state, not every state, but some states do have their own dyslexia guidelines. And so this is just for Massachusetts.
Okay. Any advising on how parents should be notified if their child fails the screening?
Sorry.
Any suggestions for how to notify parents of that?
Yeah, so many of the actual approved screeners have sample reports to send home to parents. So I would recommend looking at the screening reports, and there are parent reports within them. And definitely, obviously sending home with an explanation or setting up a conference or a meeting with parents would be advised.
I guess this could be for both of you. Are some, quote, early literacy screeners validated dyslexia screeners?
Jean, did you want to take that, or you want me?
I don't believe there are. I can't think of any screeners or really any norm or standardized assessments that focus specifically on identification of dyslexia. I think it targets reading difficulties.
Yeah, we want to be clear that the universal screeners will screen for risk. They will not screen for dyslexia.
Okay.
I think we have time maybe for one more question, Donna.
You have got it, Susan. I just want to make sure. I've been trying to go all around the questions. Sure. A clarification. A participant says their understanding is there only has to be a concern in order to refer a student for evaluation. Could you say more about that? Can you clarify, I guess, what would comprise a concern? Thank you.
Yes, it just, again, it really depends on how the urgency or the difficulties that a student is experiencing. So if parents at all times have the right to request an evaluation, if they don't agree with the findings from the initial evaluation, they have the right to request or go seek an independent evaluation. And there are laws around that, policies around that. But again, we definitely always want to encourage schools to eliminate the external factors, such as instruction and any type of modifications and adjustments, accommodations provided in the classroom. We want to eliminate all the external factors before deciding on whether or not a student needs special education services and supports. But again, parents have the right to request an evaluation whenever they feel this children need it.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you so much. Thank you, Donna. We will collect any of the questions that we were not able to answer. We want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us today. We hope you get to enjoy some of this beautiful weather for the rest of the day. And I especially want to thank my colleague, Jean Liu and Donna Goldstein, for taking part in this and sharing their knowledge with us today. This is all three of our contact information. And like we said, please feel free after today or today later to reach out to any of us and with any kind of questions or follow-up. And once again, I just want to say thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, everyone.